You are obstructing the visual symmetry of this atrium, and frankly, you look like you're waiting for a miracle rather than a meeting. This marble was imported for the tread of stakeholders, not the scuff marks of someone who clearly takes the subway. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the public fountain across the street. Harrison Thorne didn't just speak. He projected his disdain like a weapon. He stood in the center of the classic corporate lobby of Thorne Global, a cathedral of old money power. Towering fluted marble columns, polished brass accents, and a massive, tiered crystal chandelier that hummed with the silent energy of billions. He held a steaming porcelain cup of dark roast, his hands resting naturally at his sides. He wasn't looking at the woman before him as a person. He was looking at her as a weight and balance issue for his pristine image. Nia Braxton stood perfectly still, dressed in a midnight blue wool trench coat and a cream silk scarf. Her quiet authority was a silent, immovable force against his petulance. "I have a 9 a.m. appointment with the board, Mr. Thorne," Nia said, her voice a low, melodic resonance that seemed to vibrate the marble floor. "I suggest you check your guest list before you continue this performance." The lobby didn't fall silent. It filled with the sharp, jagged laughter of the surrounding elite. A woman in a shimmering champagne cocktail dress leaned against a marble pillar, swirling a glass of sparkling water. "Honestly, Harrison," she cackled, her eyes raking over Nia's deeply pigmented mahogany skin with a clinical disdain. "She's very committed to the role. An appointment with the board. Maybe she means the cleaning board? She probably thinks if she stands near the gold leaf long enough, she'll turn into a shareholder." The man beside her joined in, pointing a manicured finger at Nia's modest leather bag. "I'll give her $50 to go fetch me a real coffee. She looks like she's built for service anyway." "Go on, Harrison. Clear the atrium before the real investors arrive." 12 people in the background were ostensibly minding their business, reading newspapers or whispering near the elevators. But 8 others were acting as active witnesses, leaning in to catch every second of the humiliation with judgmental grins. Harrison Thorne finally lost his patience. In a moment of raw, unposed physical aggression, he didn't just sneer. He deliberately tilted his porcelain cup, pouring the scalding, dark liquid directly onto Nia's cream silk scarf and midnight blue coat. "Oops," Harrison hissed, his voice dripping with artificial sweetness as the hot coffee soaked into the expensive wool. "Now you have an excuse to leave and find a laundromat. You're staining my floor. Security, get this loiterer out of my sight before she devalues the property any further." The laughter in the lobby was a physical weight. Nia didn't flinch from the heat. She didn't scream. She looked at the dark stain on her scarf, then looked Harrison directly in the eye. "Thanks for the support. We couldn't do this without you. Subscribe for free to help us keep bringing you more stories. Where are you watching from? Drop your city and country in the comments." Now, back to the story. You've spent your life thinking the name on the building makes you the master of the world, Harrison? Nia whispered, the coldness in her tone causing the witnesses' laughter to falter. "But you forgot that the building is held up by the debt I just purchased. You didn't just pour coffee on a stranger. You just poured it on the only person who was willing to sign your bailout. And as of this second, I've decided to let you drown." She didn't move as 2 security guards in charcoal suits gripped her arms. She stood with lethal calmness as she was escorted toward the revolving doors, while the woman in the champagne dress toasted her exit with a mocking laugh. The revolving glass doors of the atrium didn't just spin. They were nearly taken off their hinges as a phalanx of 10 men in navy blue tactical suits and 2 high-ranking federal marshals marched into the lobby. They moved with a predatory, clinical efficiency that silenced the ambient hum of the elevators and the distant clink of coffee cups. At their head was Julian Prescott, the chief legal officer of the city's largest maritime bank. He didn't look at the $4,000 suits scattered across the marble floor. He walked straight to Nia Braxton, who was standing just outside the security gate with the dark coffee stain still steaming on her midnight blue wool trench coat. "Mrs. Braxton," Julian's voice boomed, echoing off the fluted marble columns like a thunderclap in a closed room. "The emergency foreclosure is finalized. The $1.2 billion debt facility held by Caldwell Thorne International has been called in full due to the management insolvency and executive misconduct clauses you triggered exactly 4 minutes ago. You now hold the master keys to the building, the digital infrastructure, and the physical deeds to every asset on this property. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the kind of heavy, suffocating quiet that happens right before a skyscraper collapses. Harrison Thorne, who had been leaning back against a mahogany reception desk in his bespoke pinstripe suit, felt his heart skip a beat against his ribs. His face, once a mottled red of arrogant laughter, drained of color until he looked like a statue carved from the same cold marble as the floors. The porcelain cup he had used to humiliate Nia was still in his hand, now shaking so violently it rattled against his gold signet ring. "Julian, what is this theater?" Harrison finally managed to wheeze, his voice sounding thin and small beneath the massive, tiered crystal chandelier. "This woman, she's an intruder. She's a weight and balance issue for my brand. I'm the CEO. I'm the one who signs the checks for this entire financial district." "Harrison, shut your mouth," Julian said, his voice dripping with a professional pity that felt more damaging than a physical blow. "You aren't signing anything. You've been running this firm on a line of credit that Nia's family office quietly bought out 6 months ago. You thought you were cleansing your lobby of an eyesore. You didn't realize that the woman you just treated like a servant is the person who personally guaranteed your payroll this morning. They didn't come here to interview, Harrison. They came here to foreclose on your arrogance. And you just gave them a billion reasons to pull the plug." Nia stepped back into the center of the lobby, her cream silk scarf ruined but her quiet authority, radiating a heat far more intense than the scalding coffee. The witnesses who had been laughing, the woman in the champagne dress and the man who offered $50 for a real coffee, were now frantically looking for an exit, their faces caught in masks of sudden, terrified realization. They realized that the social hierarchy they relied on had just flipped on its axis. "You were so worried about the visual symmetry of your lobby, Harrison," Nia said, her voice a low, lethal hum that seemed to vibrate the very glass of the atrium. "But the only thing devaluing this property is your presence. Julian, trigger the moral turpitude clause immediately. This manager just engaged in a public display of physical aggression and harassment against the majority debt holder. That is a Tier 1 breach. His stock options? Zeroed out. His golden parachute? Burned. His name on the building? I want the signage removed by sunset."
"You can't do this," Harrison roared, reaching out to grab a security guard's arm, but the guard, recognizing the shift in power, stepped back, letting Harrison stumble. "Robert, tell her. We've been inner circle for 20 years. Stand up for the legacy of this house." Robert didn't even look up from his newspaper. He folded it slowly and walked toward the elevators without a word, effectively erasing 20 years of friendship in the time it took to press a button. The onlookers, sensing the kill, turned on Harrison instantly. "He always was a bit much, wasn't he?" the woman in the champagne dress whispered, her voice loud enough for Nia to hear. "We were all so horrified when he poured that coffee. Truly, it was the act of a desperate, small man. We are so relieved someone with actual class is taking over the firm." Nia didn't grant them a glance. "Clear the atrium. I have a rebranding crew coming in to handle the transition, and I'd hate for any of you to get in their way. Security, please escort Mr. Thorne to the sidewalk. As he so eloquently put it, there's a public fountain across the street. He should get used to the view." As the federal marshals gripped Harrison's arms to drag him out of the lobby, Nia stood alone beneath the light of the chandelier, the undisputed owner of a $1.2 billion future, while the man who mocked her was hauled out into the rain, his porcelain cup finally shattering on the marble floor.